so guys, sorry for the interruption. And then coming back to the question that I was asking, Jatin, was that, and I will get to all the questions that you guys are already asking. I see that a lot of you have already started asking some questions. But before that, Jatin, as I was asking that, around this time, most of the people with the forced lockdown and so on, you actually have a lot of time to brush up on your skills and things like that. So are there any suggestions that you have on reading material or books that a lot of our viewers can read so that they can increase their knowledge and their base as well?
I don't really know what kind of audience is, sort of viewing us right now, because
Mhm.
I think everybody's interests are pretty varied right now.
Right.
I don't really think, I mean, I can only tell you what I've actually been brushing up my skills with, which is,
Right.
basically going back to books from, people like Suzanne and, even Ayn Rand and, probably going through some of the books that she's written in her time as well.
Right.
I mean, these are the books that I've actually been reading. I've been listening to a lot of, actually more than reading, it's also about the kind of videos that I've actually been referring to online. I mean, it's mostly based on cinematography and, writing skills and how people actually approach screenwriting and stuff like that. So yeah, it's just probably an hour and a half of brushing up on those things, but it's more binge than
Right.
concrete.
Right, right. Okay, so guys, I'm sorry, since we started the session, then that's why some of the questions that you guys have already asked have already, we've kind of lost them, so please do kindly retype them. But before I get on to them as well, Jatin, you're a person who's actually had vast experience, been in the industry for so many years now, and also someone who's really exposed to the international circuit as well. So in fashion and commercial photography, what according to you are the sort of trends which are really poignant at this point of time? Whether you consider from the term in terms of shooting, in terms of styles, in terms of colors and XYZ, things of these sorts.
Well, I genuinely believe that a lot of images that I see today, people really want to, see real things, So I think the style is pretty gone back to reality, as opposed to making up something. I strongly speak about fashion and portraiture. A point in case right now is people are wanting to see real stuff. Nothing is made up, nothing is over glamorized, nothing is cosmetic, as I would call it. People want to see real stuff. People want to see. So even when it comes down to composing something, they want to see the story around it. I remember, 20 years back when I used to refer to books on photography, which were from either black books. I mean, the only access you had, or American photo, and your Western counterparts and European counterparts. The kind
Right.
of images that they used to shoot in fashion that time. I mean, I can go on with the list, like from Ritz to Avedon to all these guys. The kind of images they used to shoot is that there was this approach of what was so called as a very perfect composition of everything.
Right.
Everything was very perfect in the frame. I mean, they used to eliminate everything and make a frame which was more unbelievable and more cosmetic and glamorized. And today, when you see a lot of editorial work and you see portraiture work, it's very real. The story is very clear. The person speaks to you. They don't go to the extent of photoshopping a lot and taking out something. If it's there, it's there. That's real. So there's a lot of photojournalism come into fashion, and vice
Right.
versa, I would say. And
Okay.
there's a lot of fashion come into photojournalism as well.
Right, right.
So
But do you
yeah.
think do you think a lot of this is also because we are in such an interconnected world and, access to a lot of photography, technology, and pictures has become so easy? Is that also one of because earlier you'd always rely on magazines and books and stuff, but now with the internet, social media platforms like Instagram and Facebook and all of these things, do you think it's because of a lot of the realism has come because of that?
No, not really. I don't really think that is particular. I think it's just generally how artists evolve, how societies evolve, so to say. I mean, every artist's work is basically to a certain extent a reflection of the society that they are living around. I mean, a lot of things around reflect on you. So, I mean, I think today people want to see real stuff because people are not interested in. I mean, even if you see in cinema today, there are people who are interested in real stories. You know, they're not interested in. I mean, those times of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone are I don't think passe. You know, right now. I mean, people today want to see a Devil Wears Prada, for example. You know, it's real. It's going on. They
Right.
want to see stories. You know, so I think that's probably it's how artists have evolved. It's how societies have evolved. It's what people are more. People. I mean, I think in 10, 15 years back, it was easy for somebody to see a picture and get wowed about it and say, "Wow, you know, it's like it's a life that I would really want to live." But today, people have accepted the reality. People have said that this is what I'm comfortable with. This is my space. This is I'm fine if I'm like this. I don't want to be another so and so. People are trying to look for their individuality. You know, people are trying to look for what they are good at, as opposed to what they can actually impersonate somebody to be. So I think
Right.
it's just a
Right.
reflection of the society on oneself.
Right, right. So a lot of it actually what you're talking about, I understand, is something where you kind of want to stand out and it's your style, right? It's a style of photography so that you basically want to develop that. How does that really come about? I mean, I know that there is no, every artist has their own process and it comes with time. But how do you, is there a way you can develop it or,
No, I don't think there's a process to develop it. I think it's about an artist discovering himself or herself. I think that itself is a journey, right? I mean, you may take so many years to find yourself. You know, I've known of. I mean, I can speak for myself. I mean, I think it took me years to figure out what I'm really good at. You know, and what
right,
my area of interest is, and what I mean. I've done a huge range of shoots, and it's taken me a few years to realize that this is where my strength is, and that strength is because this is what I really enjoy doing. And if I spend more time doing it, not only will I be more productive, but at the same time I'll you know, leave behind images which people would really be interested in seeing. So it's also
right,
the journey of an artist himself, as to they'll have to discover yourself. Nobody can tell you from outside that this is what you should be doing. You know, you'll have to discover it yourself if you're an artist, a true artist. I mean, unless and until you just want to do commercial photography where you will be told what to do all the time.
right, right. So before I move on to one of the questions that actually one of our viewers asked, and I've pinned that down. But since you're talking about this aspect, then how does one get to about becoming a photographer like you? You know, because it's not an easy process. It's a very difficult one, and I'm sure a lot of the viewers would like to know that.
Well, I mean, I think I'll correct you there when I'm saying becoming like me,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
I hope nobody wants to become like me. I hope that
Okay.
people become better than me, take better pictures than I can, and you know, basically tell their stories. I mean, I think that's how. But I think you know, the journey is pretty simple to break down in terms of how, if anybody is interested in knowing you know, how you're able to create a body of work. I mean, that's how I would put it. You know, if I've
Right.
been shooting for 20 years, there is a serious body of work that I've done, diverse,
Right.
different. I mean, I've touched a lot of areas of photography, from commercial to editorial to fine art. You know, I mean, I think if that's the genres people want to speak about in detail, done multiple exhibitions in India as well as internationally.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
I've been lucky actually to a certain extent, because I've kept getting opportunities to do the kind of work that I did. Also, clients who supported my ideas. But I think how one gets those projects, if at all, is what you're asking. I mean, I think you just have to, you know, keep pushing yourself, build that faith in clients to be able to, for them to sponsor your ideas. So in the beginning, everybody, I mean, for example, I started with a portfolio of 5 images, right? I mean, this is way back in 94, 95. I mean, nobody starts with a body of work. You start with
Right.
something as basic as 5 pictures. So I remember 25 years back when I went to Lintas as an agency. When one art director had called me, you know, can you come with your portfolio? That time we used to carry those huge prints. You know, there was no digital, no laptops, no nothing. You know, we used to carry bromides, you know, at that time. And I literally went
Right.
only with five prints. You know, I just, that's what I had. And they said, "Oh, that's all you have." And I said, "Well, it's not that this is all I have, you know, but these are the only ones that I would like to show you." And they were pretty impressed with that process, because you know, those 5 really made the difference, because those were images which sort of could turn people's heads, I mean, where people would want to stop and
Right.
gaze and see and, find something interesting in it. They were conceptual at the same time. You could see the effort that had gone into making those pictures. I mean, for your
Right.
surprise, I mean, as much as fashion and commercial work that I do now, 3 out of those 5 prints were actually product shots.
Wow.
So
Okay.
but they were different, because you see, you also have to understand that those were the times when you couldn't correct images. You could, what you shot is what you got. So
Right.
literally, they were shot on negative, made onto a bromide. They were shot on transparencies. We made an internegative out of it and made it and printed on bromide. So literally, there was no post production on it at all. And when people saw something which was like, wow, I mean, even a product can be shot like that, it is bound to impress someone. So I think it's something like, start as basic as that, and that's how your journey begins. It's to build trust in somebody that you can look at things differently, whether it's a product, whether it's a garment, whether it's cosmetic hair, whether it's fashion, whether it's architecture, but your perspective to it, how you made a difference, and then the journey begins, and then one thing leads to the other. You'll gain a lot more trust from other people. There are a lot of art, I mean, there are fashion designers, there are art directors, there are makeup artists. I mean, this whole industry is so huge, actually, that you
Right.
will definitely find somebody that you'll probably have the similar sensibility and create a good body of work.
Right. Okay. So before I continue, actually, Jatin, this is like a very interesting point that you made. But before that, there are some comments which are coming in for me to unpin the
Hmm.
comment that I'd actually done. And the funniest thing is the first time I actually pinned something so that it's easier to find, and now I can't find a way how to unpin it. So if any
Okay.
of our viewers can actually tell me how to unpin this is going to be difficult. Because while you were talking, I was actually trying to figure out how do I do this. But nonetheless, okay. So let's just jump on to the first question that one of our viewers is also asking, which is Mandar basically. And there are some other beautiful questions also which have already lined up. So Mandar is actually asking that most of the advertising and commercial photographers are saying that there isn't a lot of work, photography work that is left because the medium is now shifting towards videos, and hence the photographers are basically turning into a rare commodity. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree. Basically, motion pictures, as I would call it, as opposed to
Right,
videos. I mean, I think motion pictures is what people are moving to in terms of more of an accepted norm. But at the
right,
same time, I think it depends on, from a commercial aspect, it depends on where you really stand. I mean, right now, the clients, if you're really talking about commercial photography and commercial filmmaking, uh, clients want that medium because that is more accepted, and they will invest in something which they're going to get a certain return out of. So if videos
right,
is the thing, I mean, I don't know, if you can pick up a camera and take pictures, I don't think it's going to be very difficult to tell stories with films as well. You don't have to really limit yourself to just taking pictures, and it's just about a lot of pictures. It's just that it's a medium that you'll have to invest a lot of time in to understand really well, because I personally feel that a lot of images telling a story is far more easier than a single picture telling a story.
right.
So if you're already been practicing photography for a while, I think making a motion video will be probably more easier. To you. It's just about giving it a shot.
Understand, understand. Okay, thank you so much, Mansi, for your help in finding out how to unpin it.
Is
It
that
was
Mansi
really
Scott?
helpful.
Is that
Yes, that
Mansi
is
Scott?
actually
Yeah. Mansi, thank
right.
you.
I was trying all of those things, but unfortunately, it was not working. But yes, finally, I've actually managed to do that.
Amazing, amazing singer, and what a voice.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you
Great.
for being here,
Okay,
Mansi.
right. Coming back to the previous one that you were actually talking about, where you said that, that at that point of time you basically only had about 5 pictures and you were called by one of the agency person from Lintas and stuff like that. But do you think since times have changed now, it is a little bit more difficult to get access to a lot of these agencies because, of course, at that point of time, the industry was still not so competitive. There were still a handful of photographers. And now there is a lot more competition, which means that accessing some of those agency people is not really easy. Would I be correct to assume that?
Not really, because I mean, see, you have to understand if the photographers were lesser that time, the volume of work then was also much lesser. You know,
Right.
I think both have scaled up together, right? I mean, if there is more competition and more people wanting to take up photography as a profession, so have the number of clients increased as well. I think there's a lot more access. Like when I started off, there were two fashion magazines. I mean, and imagine there was Femina and there was Society magazine. You know, these two were fashion magazines at that time. You know, there was no Elle and Harper's and Vogue, and nothing of those magazines were present in this country. So, well, photographers, there were more photographers, and then there were more magazines as well. You know,
Right.
similarly, I mean, there were a lot of clients which I can see now around, and you know, there's a lot more work if there are more photographers. I don't think that has
Right.
changed a lot. And when it's
Understand.
answering your second question, I think when it comes to access, I don't think access is difficult because as an artist, you have to understand if you want to enter the world of commercial photography, if you are looking for a job, so is there somebody out there looking for a good photographer to give the job to as well. You know, I think it's a two-way street, and I don't think it's a one-way street. So a good art director, a good client, you know, will always look for a good photographer to give the job to. You just have to make
Right.
sure that you approach them in the right way, you know, and pursue. You know,
Right.
so
Right.
I think that should be a
So,
problem.
but how does that approach work? I mean, for example, do you just go and try and knock onto most of these agency doors, or do you, I mean, how would that really work?
Well, I mean, there's a saying: if you know, opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. You know, I mean, there's always a saying. So you know, you keep doing what you're doing. I mean, I think if your work is basically that's the thing about good work, right? I mean, you can never hide good work. It'll always be noticed.
Right.
So
Right.
keep doing that good work and just make sure that it is visible to people. Today, there are a lot more platforms where you can show it to people. I mean, we didn't have social media earlier. We didn't have, there was lesser means to reach out to people with what you had. Today, you can. I mean, and I don't really think, I think it's easier to reach out to people today in today's day and age. So the moment you
Right.
keep doing what you're doing with integrity, keep making a difference with the kind of images that you're taking, I think you know somebody will find you to do a great job with whatever products they have.
Right. Right. So you were talking about having doing good work and sharing it with as many people as possible or putting it out there. So, coming on to the aspect of social media as well as the body of work as such, of what we talk about. So, is it like that people do tend to, especially photographers, do tend to put different work which is on their websites and on their portfolios as compared to what it is on social media? Because a lot of times social media is again a little bit more friendly. Things. Do you think that's the case? Because
Well, I
considering that I've seen, sorry to interject,
yeah,
but
sure.
considering I've seen your website as well, and I've seen, of course, your Instagram page as well. I've known you since so many years, and I see a lot of difference in the body of work which is exhibited in both places as well. Because one is one more serious, and the other one's more about just connecting and engaging viewers.
Yeah, see, the thing is, you have to understand one thing very clearly that I actually am not the generation of the so-called the social media fanatic. You know, I mean, there's an absolutely new generation which understands this medium much better than I do.
Right,
As a matter of fact, I mean, I think I'm least social when it comes to social media. I think my updates probably happen. I mean, I think as we were talking a few days back, you know, I hardly update my social media. I mean, I'll suddenly wake up and say, okay, I'll post. In fact, I started my social media very late, you know, as well. That's because I don't think that is a platform for me, you know, because I am already full with connecting with people whom I am busy with. You know, I'm already producing work which I really want to, and that I run short of time of the work that I really want to produce. So
Right.
for me to reach out to people, I mean, I may have a lot of work which is lying in my archives, which I think that social media is probably not the right platform. I like to see
I
prints
understand.
blown up, in a gallery, framed, and I keep printing images which when I see somebody who's genuinely liking my work, I make a print and actually send a frame piece of work to them because they're true art
Wow.
connoisseurs.
Right.
They really like to put that work. So I belong to that. So and for me, social media is to a certain extent much shorter shelf life. Which is why if you see, maybe there are a lot of artists who put up their work, which is what they are about, but at the same time they're
Hmm.
not so active, and so that's the two things about being on social media, right? One, you are on social media, and once you are very active on social media. So there are a lot of
Right.
people who are very active on social media, which is got nothing to do with it. So I see a lot of artists, a new gen artists who are active and they're posting what they're eating, what they're drinking, where they went for a swim, what their friends are. It's got nothing to do with their work or what they represent, but it's about their life. It's how they live, which is also an interesting story. It's about how you're using social media today. And
Right.
some people see that as, oh, let's make this. I mean, I know for a fact that there are a lot of people who are seeing Instagram and social media as a platform to sell stuff as well. I mean, no
Right.
harm in that. I mean, they want people to come see what they do and buy off it. I mean, I think there was a big story probably a year back about how Leonardo DiCaprio actually bought a painting out of an Instagram feed. I mean, that made
Right.
big news as well. So there's nothing harm. I mean, there's a medium available. It depends on how you want to use it. And I'm the last person who can advise anybody on how to use social media because believe me, I think these guys are also still trying to figure out, how they can actually make best use of it. I mean, it's a platform available and people can use it the way they'd like to.
Understand. Understand. Okay. I'm going to take it one of the questions that one of our viewers is asking, which is Can Guy Sancho, and he's asking that, how is photographing a celebrity different from photographing a regular person?
Not different at all. It depends on how you see it. I mean, celebrities are people, right? At the end of the day, it really shouldn't make a difference to you what your subject is. I mean, because you're going out there taking a picture of a personality. The difference being, yes, when you're shooting a model, you've casted a model for a particular reason, and when you're shooting a celebrity, you're shooting that celebrity for a very different reason altogether. There is a
Right.
personality already been established. You have to make sure that it's a public figure, and you're not supposed to do something which sort of creates an image which that person is not. And while when a model is being casted for a particular specific reason. It's not a personality actually, so to say.
Right.
So
Right.
I mean, I think in terms of taking a picture, one has to keep in mind when they're conceptualizing who they're shooting with. But other than
Right.
that, I don't really think there is any difference as such. I mean, it's not that I would ask a model to do something which I would not ask a celebrity to do, and vice versa.
Right, right. But is there a lot more pressure? I mean, as you were saying that, of course, because they are public figures, then I mean, there are a lot of agencies involved, managers involved, teams involved, and all of these things. Then does that tend to add a lot of pressure as well?
You have to understand one thing: it's a very, very organized industry. Uh, Contrary to what people may think, but it's a very organized industry. If a celebrity has come to your studio to take a picture, whether it's for an editorial, personal, or commercial reasons, you're you are anyway been chosen to have taken a picture with the team. There is
Right,
an entire team which decides, right from a client to whether it's a magazine or whether it's an art director, stylist, designer, whoever. There's a whole team which has made the decision of what the team should be for this. If you're already part of the team, then there can't be a pressure because the team has to now come together and deliver. So I don't think there is really pressure, or one should feel so.
right.
You're a professional and you're there to do a job, and you have to give your best. That is the only pressure there should be.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, one of our viewers actually, Knots by Amp, is asking that do magazine covers in photography pay, or these are usually done for more of publicity exposure for photographers?
Uh, Magazine covers, do they pay?
Like,
Is
for,
that the question?
yes, yes. Or they are done more from a perspective of just trying to get more publicity as a photographer because you,
No, no, of course, every photographer gets paid. Every
okay,
photographer gets paid. Yeah. I mean, I get paid. I
okay.
don't know about everybody else.
Understand, understand. Right.
Mhm.
What are the biggest challenges when you?
Only photography magazines don't pay.
Oh God, that is a really good one. Okay, okay. What are the biggest challenges that that are there working in this sort of a genre, according to you? What would you say that are some of the biggest ones
Challenges as a photographer for
as a photographer?
being a commercial photographer or just
Yeah.
being a photographer in the.
Both photographer. I would firstly, if you can just take it from a commercial photographer and then just generally a photographer as well, because post that I actually want to kind of get into a little bit of question about how India perceives art and so on. So it'll be a great transition into that.
Uh, I mean, let me tell you something, and I think that probably will be for every artist, not just a photographer. Is one has to understand that you have anyway chosen to do something which is not considered very lucrative to begin with. You know, the word commerce, the word this thing doesn't really play a role in it. You know, nobody thinks ki, acha, main saal ke I'll make so much of money in a year if I take photography.
Right, right,
As opposed to if I become, an assistant manager in a company, or if I join a bank, I'll make so much. I mean, those pay
right,
packets are pretty, you know, framed. I mean, for a fact that this is what it is, but doesn't happen when it comes to art, any sort of art, rather, whether it's writing or photography, filmmaking, whatever. So you really have to sort of find your way through, which means
understand.
that challenges is not something that ever bothers an artist, you know, because I that's my belief is that it shouldn't really bother, because you are so engrossed in the joy of taking pictures, that everything else happens around. Today
Right,
is far more easier. What I feel is that today is far more easier because you can rent equipment today, you can rent studios today. When you take a picture, it doesn't really cost you because you're not investing in film, you're not investing in making a print. I think taking up photography years ago was difficult because you had to buy your own camera, you had to buy film. We used to count every frame, because you have to process that film, and I'm sure everybody knows that process. But today, that's not the case. You can take a picture literally from an iPhone.
right,
Also you can take a picture with nobody questions your equipment today. You can hire your equipment today. You can rent studios, which means that you can live off very low overheads at the same time because you can have the
right,
option of renting a lot of stuff. So challenges today are far lesser. Similarly, your stories are a lot more stories that people are going to, a lot more platforms. So I think in today's day and age, the challenges should be much lesser than what it used to be. However, I think the challenge that people face today is, the not sooner do they realize that they run out of stories. They come to a point where they start realizing is that, oh, this what really I want to do. They're not
right.
very convinced. I get a lot of assistants as well who they run out of juice, and lose confidence. So I think that those people are not really meant for it. I mean, this is a long term thing. I mean, I think you got to commit yourself to it long term, and unless you are really passionate from inside to be able to do something, I don't think that it really works long way.
Right. Right. But actually, before I take that, before I ask my next question, one of our viewers from Bhutan, actually, is Drukpa Photography, is asking, what do you think about composite photographs? What are your thoughts on them?
On composite photographs, as in?
Right. I also am actually, so Drupa, if you're on, then probably you could just elaborate a little bit more. But that's one of the questions that they're asking. One of our other viewers was also asking, which is Vivid Snaps, that can you still get a good portfolio without a stylist and an art director today?
Yes, absolutely. As I said, as I said, when I started my career, I started with 5 prints, out of which 3 were product shots. And I still am doing a lot of fashion and portrait work. So
Right.
it really doesn't
Right.
matter. Frankly, it doesn't really matter.
Understand, right. So, in fact, you were saying that you've actually done a lot of. I just want to ask you and speak to you a little bit about one of the pictures that you have actually shot, which is, which was with Mr. Dilip Kumar, Amitabh Bachchan, and Shah Rukh Khan, all of them in the same frame.
Oh, nice.
I'm right. So, how was that experience like, and what was, I mean, how did you conceptualize that shoot? What was the thought process? If you can just take us a little bit through that, that'd be very interesting for our viewers to know.
That was iconic, these things just have to happen to you. I feel you just I can't if I really start to write experiences on that particular shoot, I can probably write a book, because that was a cover for a magazine called Filmfare. So they were basically doing a story on 100 years of cinema. So cinema had completed 100 years in the country, and it was a very iconic time for our country. A century of work through these actors, and they got and the entire team was working on it for more than 6 months to make sure they get that one date where all these 3 mega stars are available on that one particular date, to represent different eras of photography. So you see, we had somebody who was 92 years of age, we had somebody who was 72 years of age, and we had somebody who was 52. So there was Dilip Saab who was 92, 72, and of course, now that's a mammoth task. I mean, it doesn't happen. I mean, when are you going to be? I think it's just the stars were just aligned for me to. I mean, and I say stars, it's like really stars were aligned for me to be to get that opportunity to take that cover, because it's iconic. I mean, to just get all these 3 guys in one frame is pretty iconic. So that made it to the cover of the magazine, and we did some very interesting photos inside of some great moments together. And yeah, all 3 of them were equally excited, because I mean, when are you going to get such 3 big stars to come on the same platform and same
Right.
frame, more importantly, same frame, and do a photo shoot. So yeah, it was pretty iconic. I mean, and as I said, the experience that I had on that shoot is something that you can only feel. It cannot be discussed. It cannot be spoken about. It's not something, because it's the atmosphere is just something else there. We shot it in Dilip Saab's house. Because
Right.
of his age, he couldn't travel anywhere. So he was very kind, and he was very courteous. Even Saira ji was very courteous to let us the team come and shoot there.
Right.
So it was very memorable. Yeah.
Right, right. But how does one plan and execute these sort of, shoots? Because I'm sure a lot of viewers who are watching this would love to understand, whenever they get a chance, then I guess planning to executing things like this are extremely important, and that's where the crux also lies.
Well, let me just give you a little bit of background. This is one of its kind of a shoot. I don't really think you can plan it to an extent where you're going to tell people what to do. You have to
Right,
understand that there are critical conditions that Dilip Saab had even at that time, wherein he's 92. Also, he's not at the peak of his health at that time to be able to take instructions, so to say. I mean, he's given up professional life for such a long time, yet he was kind enough to oblige. So you can't really go with a plan there and say, "Acha साहब आपको ये ऐसे बैठना है." You have to look to your left, and he's going to come from the right. No, there is a certain basic idea about that we need to do portraiture. We need to capture these personalities at its best. I went a week before to understand what does he react to really well, and I got to know that it was Sufi music that he really liked. So the
Okay.
homework was about making sure that I carried a lot of Sufi music that he could listen to. And believe me, that music that I carried was enchanting, where everybody just got so engrossed into that music that helped us. So you built an atmosphere which everybody is really enjoying. You know, they want
Right.
to be in that moment, they want to be in that time. And at the same time, you stick to just making sure that you use all your experience about great portraiture work, trying and coming out with interesting stories to tell them to interact. You know, so you try and remember some of the most iconic things they've done, so that they could internally react to with each other and stuff. And beyond that, you have to also understand that these are also people. They're no ordinary models or new actors. They're just legends. You know, all three of them are legends. So even they know the premise. You know, you don't have to tell an actor how to enact a particular role. You know, the moment they know that it's iconic, the moment they know that it's for 100 years of cinema, they know exactly the space and they will act accordingly. So you just have to give them the space and then just keep capturing great portraiture. You just have to make sure your lighting is right, and you don't
Right.
lose a single moment. So you just have to make sure you can shoot as fast as you can, not to miss a single
Right.
moment, and capture those images.
Right. But how, I mean, as a young photographer, how do you maintain that balance between, self-doubt and trying to push yourself to really do something great or improve? How does that work?
Being your strongest critic, I think.
Okay.
If you ask me, that is the best way it works. You know, you be your critic. Try and find things that you could have done better even after you finish shooting. Analyze your work. Try and see a lot of images and see that there are sometimes like it happens to me with films actually, where I see a film and I see content and I say, it's a flop film, but this had the potential of being a great film. The story is so interesting, but it's not executed well. So what do
Right.
you learn from these things? So you sometimes see a particular, even an ad for that matter, for photography enthusiasts, I'll simplify it. Like you see an ad and you say, oh, the thought of this ad was so beautiful, but it lacks execution.
Right.
So you put in your thought and say, how would you have done it? Or if you have already done it, how could you have done it better? So
Right.
you'll have to be at a state of self-evaluating, self-analyzing things to better it. And I think that's the only way to push yourself. I think push yourself and you'll probably be there. I mean, I look back at my work and I hate it most of the time. So
Okay. Wow.
so
Right.
it
Why
often
is
happens
that?
to me.
You,
It because I genuinely feel that I could have done much better. And it's only now the picture is already shot. You can't do anything about it.
right.
So I always look back and say, oh, I wish I could have done something better. I think I
Right.
could have done something better. Yeah.
I
So it's
understand.
that
Right.
feeling, it's that feeling of being hungry all the time. Yeah.
Understand. So, which is what? So, how do you actually, you mentioned earlier that a lot of times your assistants as well, a lot of people in general, photographers as well, they always tend to run out of inspiration or tend to run out of juice, It always happens to everyone. How do you keep yourself going at that point of time? What do you do?
Um, well, I hope I don't run out of it. I I really hope that I don't, because if you do run out of inspiration, and I I can tell you that you can't perform for sure. If you're
Right.
given a job and you're out of inspiration, you genuinely cannot come out with a good picture, because there's so much of a heart and soul that goes into making a picture, and people need to really realize that if you're not there, present, 100%, I don't think you are capable of making a great picture. Then you're just snap shooting.
Understand.
Then you're just making pictures which are, they're just going to be there and they're going to be forgotten within no time. So,
Understand.
I mean, keep yourself motivated. I mean, I don't really know how one keeps themselves motivated with the process of image. And as you said, it's walking a tightrope, Bhavya, because at one end, I'm saying that, you have to be your own critic, which means that if I'm saying that I'm hating my pictures and I could have done it better, but it's just that slight drive which pushes you, and at the same time, newer challenges and newer opportunities you got to kick yourself with those things. So you keep walking that tightrope, I feel, and keep yourself motivated.
Understand, right. One of our viewers, Risha, was actually asking that nowadays people focus a lot on editing their photographs rather than shooting raw color and light. Do you feel that's necessary?
I really am not very biased towards people who want to edit the pictures, frankly. I mean, whatever helps you get what you want, frankly. I mean, as far as you really know, the thing is that a lot of people would take a picture and then sit on a computer and try to do something. So I don't
Right,
belong to try to do something sort of space. I mean, if I'm taking a picture, I really want to take a picture which I have in my mind. So I'll set my lights accordingly. I will, do my sets and my styling and everything according to the picture that I have in my mind or what I want to create. And I will stop myself at knowing that now beyond this, only enhancement technology is going to help me take this picture further. So be it. So if at all I need to superimpose clouds or change the horizon or something like that, so be it, because I'm not equipped to shooting on a great skyline for that matter, and I will
right.
superimpose it later, so I'm fine with it. But as far as I knew, this is what I wanted, and I light up accordingly and I conceptualize accordingly. So as I said, I'm not really biased towards whether they want to edit, post, or whatever, as far as you know what picture you're creating, because you are responsible and you're going to be judged by that picture anyway. So
Right.
try and be away from the idea of somehow taking a picture, and because now there is no film and you are spending any money on film, people end up taking a lot of pictures to say that ek to acha niklega.
Right,
And I've seen that happen a lot. They just go on this
right.
burst mode and just go, shoot about 300 frames, and and then they say that one definitely will be nice out of this. So it doesn't work
Right.
like that. I think if you know your picture, you'll get it in the 10 frames or maybe 15 max.
Understand, understand. It's great that you spoke about burst mode because there's a new section that we're actually going to talk about, and that's called burst mode. But I'll come to that in a little bit. Before that, I'll take one of the questions which one of our viewers is asking, which is Kasturi, and she's asking, how do you conceptualize your shoots? And what's been your favorite project that you can share with our viewers over here? So that possibly they can also look at it maybe later on or something of that sort.
Uh, what has been my favorite project? I mean, I think I've really been blessed with a lot of great projects. I've had really, really amazing clients who sort of helped me create the pictures that I really wanted to create
Right,
for them.
right.
You know,
Yes,
they
but you have to
they
pick two. Let's say you have to pick two.
I don't know. I mean, I don't have access to it right now, but if you do, I mean, I'll be more than happy to. Why don't you, have you got any pictures which,
Yes, I
because
do actually. I'll come to that definitely because there's
okay,
some very interesting pictures that I've narrowed down. I'd love to hear how you've actually
sure, sure.
taken those pictures. But if you just
Hmm.
have to on the top of your mind, if you just like have to pick two projects which
So
have really been close to your heart.
so there's basically, I mean, I'll share. There have been a lot of images. I think it'll
Right,
be unfair for me to say these are the only ones because
right,
there are a lot of companies which have conceptual, because they used to come to me only because I could conceptualize, and they used to come on with a blank canvas and say, let's create an image of what you think suits our brand best. But I think
right,
I'll discuss two main brands which. I've had a very long association with, I think,
right,
because I think I was working with them over 6-7 years, and created a massive body of work. One was the JW Marriott Group, who I used to shoot a lot of food festivals for, and the calendars and the newsletters and the magazines. And there was a time where I used to shoot so much for them and created so much work with the Marriott Group all over India as well as internationally, that they ended up using me.
right, right,
And the other was a real estate brand called the K. Raheja Universal. I mean, I think, in fact, that is one of the brands that have really, really helped me produce a massive body of work over the past years. And that came from
right.
just complete faith and belief. I mean, I think we had an entrepreneur who, Ashish Raheja, who I think I quote on is somebody who really admired this uh, the joy of pictures as such. I mean, he wanted to
Right.
see those images. He wanted to marry art and architecture, and allowed us
Right.
to do so, and sponsored it every time for the brand. So these two
Right.
are exceptional bodies of work that we created in a longer period of time.
Understand. Right. So in fact, these are some of the things that I've actually narrowed down as well in terms of pictures. So I'll come to that. But before that, our friend from Bhutan actually was talking about composite images. So composite image apparently is a combination of multiple images merged into a single image. So that's what they're saying. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, I'm
I
not
think
really
it's
sure what thoughts.
probably no. I think it's probably the same thing that I explained a while back. That it's about conceptualizing a picture where you don't have access of maybe the skylines that you've thought of, or maybe there's a certain element of art that you require in the image, which is not possible for multiple reasons. And you end up shooting that separately and superimposing it. So, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's what you would have tried to refer to. But
Right.
which is fine. I mean, I think compositing an image is fine, because if you can come up with a great image where people really love it, you like it, I think it's a very clear indication that you were very clear on what you wanted in that picture, which is
Right.
why you ended up taking pictures from different where you ended up shooting a lot of pictures and then compositing it to make an image. It's
Right.
storytelling. I don't really judge anybody by using technology if it's available.
I understand, right. From a shoot perspective as well, there are a lot, I mean, of course, as you said, that you always have to plan things and conceptualize and all of these things, and a lot of times things really don't go as per what you've planned. How do you manage those contingencies? What do you do?
So there are several ways it cannot go well, right? I mean, I think it's to be specific. I mean, sometimes the entire team that you have hired, there is a missing link in the team itself who've not understood the basic idea of what you want to achieve. Point in case
Right,
could be a makeup artist, could be a stylist who's not got the right clothes, could be a model who's not understanding the brief and not being able to enact what you're asking. So there are multiple reasons why something doesn't happen the way it does, and sometimes
right,
it's probably too late to change anything on the set. Well, it's what you do. Then it's what you do is improvise. I mean, I guess bring the project closest. I mean, there are two ways. One is that if you genuinely have uh, the liberty to convince your client to push the shoot to another date, if that would result into a better shoot for them, then I have done this multiple times in the past, where I have actually scrapped the day of the shoot and pushed it to another day. I mean, that is clearly
okay,
option one, always. Clearly
right,
option one. If it's
right,
possible, try to fix the link, missing
right,
link. Try to fix
right,
that. You're not happy with something, just don't do it for the heck of it. If it's not possible, because sometimes you're dealing with a lot of time, they have deadlines, they want to release the ads, the something has to go into print, things like that. Then you try and improvise as much as you can. I guess you just try and fix it and bring the project to its best possible outcome that you can. I mean, I
I
don't think there
understand.
is any other. Yeah. I mean, that's why
Okay,
skill set. That's why skill set really matters, right? I mean, I think your skill set is not only about taking a great picture, but it's also about analyzing such situations. Making sure that if a situation like this arises, how are you going to be able to handle it? And I think that's where, whether it's an advertising agency or a big brand who's putting their trust into you in choosing you as a photographer. This is something that this is their contingency plan as well, because they know for a fact if there is a problem in the shoot, then you are capable of handling a situation like this and still come with the best outcome.
understand. Right. Coming to the aspect of what we were talking about, which was basically about the images, and the body of work. So I'm actually going to use my spare phone here just to talk a little bit about what you were saying. And one of the works that I narrowed down, when I was going through your body of work. This is something that is beautiful. So if you can just tell us a little bit about this image, guys.
Oh,
If you can see this image, guys, then probably okay. Is the image viewable? I hope it's viewable to everybody. So this is one of the images which is basically from, I think, the body of work from Raheja, right? So if you could
Oh
just take
yeah,
us through
yeah.
that, how did you shoot this? And I mean, this is just brilliant. I really love the concept behind this. How did this happen, and what is the concept behind it?
So I think, if I'm not mistaken, this was the cover for the K Raheja Universal
Right,
one of the calendar, as well as I think they use this for the advertisement as well,
right,
wherein we created human skylines along with the existing skylines. So we got in about 10, 12 models to sort of, so they were dressed in bodysuits and silhouettes, and they were placed in such a way that they ended up forming buildings along with the existing buildings in the background and create a skyline. So it was like almost like a human and concrete skyline together. Yeah, so this was the cover of
right.
it. So the concept of this entire, I think there was an entire series of 12 to 13 images that we shot, of which, and the concept of the entire calendar was skylines. I think your screen's
Understand.
gone off. Yeah, I think your
Oh, is
screen's
it?
gone off.
Oops.
Yeah.
Oops. Okay. Right. But how did you go about conceptualizing this and shooting it? I mean, thinking about it is one thing, and then executing it is another. So can you take us through that process?
So yeah, as I said, the skyline, the idea was very clearly. I mean, if you see the rest of the images in this entire series, were skylines was the concept. So we took brick and mortar materials, construction materials to form skylines, but the
Right.
cover had to be a little more larger than life. So we got these 12 or 13 girls, I think, who were dressed in bodysuits, and we sort of made them stand. And if you see the form of the way the girls are standing,
Right.
they basically create architectural forms. So office spaces and residential complexes they create, and the way they merge into the existing skyline. So this was all at a sketch mode. We realized that if you've seen a skyline, whether it's the Hong Kong skyline or the New York skyline, I mean, I've almost seen human forms in skylines, because it's something that humans have actually evolved over a period of time, right? I mean, they've made these buildings for work, for residential reasons, and there's a human connect to it. I mean, they don't exist without humans, and a lot of them are. I mean, it's totally man-made. It's human creation. So I wanted to intersperse that entire idea of human creation with the skyline, and that's how this concept came about. And
Nice. Nice. Okay.
and once your concept is clear, I think execution is fairly simple. I mean, the sunset sort of gives you that entire larger than life. You get dramatic skies. You want the picture to be dramatic.
Right.
The same picture in the day may not be as interesting, so shoot them more as a silhouette. Things like that. So you just choose the time of the day and make the picture more dynamic,
Understand.
and it results into something like this.
Okay, so another image that I'm actually going to pick is going to be different, and it's a little bit more in terms of commercial photography. And I hope the viewers you're able to see the picture much more with clarity. Unfortunately, I'm just holding it on to the phone, but I hope you're able to view it. So the next one I'm actually going to pick, and I picked this because in product and commercial photography, it is really important to especially when you have a subject as well which is inanimate with a human being. It's a little difficult sometimes to do this, and this was one of the pictures that I picked. uh, can you tell us a little bit about this, and how was it
Oh,
difficult,
nice.
because you are actually bringing out the product as well, and then you're trying to add an element. What is the concept, and how did you do this?
So here the thing is that this was, again, I mean, I'm glad you've actually chosen all the covers for the
Okay.
rest of the series.
Right.
I mean, the series of this entire series was actually far more elaborate. This was just
Right.
the cover. So now here, this was basically a series of images we did for when TVS launched their model called Flame.
Right.
And this art team from Bangalore, they approached me and they said that we have this product which we are launching, and we really want to do something very different when it comes to bikes. So we were pondering about what we can do, and we the thing is that me and the agency got involved into this conversation even before pitching this to the client. And the agency thought that we'll be able to create these images only if the photographer was a part of this conversation right from the planning stage.
Right.
So
Right.
so we started conceptualizing this together. And what I was always very interested in, and taking uh, a picture of, was this comic book sort of feel to the images. So
Right.
there were these super women. I mean, there was a lot of work that was already done when it came to superhuman beings in terms of the males, but we wanted to do something with super women, you know,
Right.
because we wanted the bike to actually be very male, and
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
female to be a part of this picture to complete the shot. So we got inspired by a lot of these comic book characters, Catwomen, and things like that. And they said, let's take a series of images which actually look like they're these sketches from comic books.
Right.
And that was it. I mean, I think if you see how the images in a comic book are sketched, so if you see there's a very sketchy style to this series of images.
Right.
So when we took this idea to the client, I think the client's apprehension was very simple. Keep, is my bike going to be, because we are launching this, obviously, is my bike going to be visible or not, to people? Is my bike going to be, because I mean, people are not aware of this product at all. And I think that
Right.
was the only consolation that the client needed. And I think we were very clear that let the bike be the hero in most of the shots,
Right.
because the design of the bike allows itself to be shot well. I mean, I don't think we were dealing with a mediocre product here, where we would have had to have challenges in making the bike look good. The bike was already looking very good. So we just
Mm-hmm.
took a 360-degree view of the bike, shot bikes in multiple angles to make sure how it looks in what angle. And then it
Right.
was literally taking sketches out of these women as to where they can come from. There was one picture in this series wherein she was coming down from a flyover, holding a huge rope, and was going to
Right.
just about jump on the
Right.
bike. This was the
Right.
cover wherein, I mean, I think if you see the headlight of this bike and the way the woman is screaming into it, it almost looks
Right.
like we've almost given a very human touch to the bike here. We've almost made it, I mean, and if I'm not mistaken, I think this was shot even before this Transformers came into play. I mean, here you can, like,
Understand.
when you see the movie Transformers, after a point you forget that they are Autobots. They almost speak like humans. So
Right.
I think here also, I think that bike have that sort of character of being almost human, and
Right.
interacting with the
Right.
model. So
Okay.
yeah, so it is almost yeah. So as I said, it's the inspiration started from a comic book strip, and said, let's
Okay.
try and create images which are like that.
Right. There you go.
We are back.
Yes. It's
We're
it's the
back.
funniest thing actually, that a lot of times when you're trying to search for the person you want to add on, it just does not show up, unfortunately. I don't know why. Probably it might not be a good idea for me to update this as well. I don't know why I chose to do it just before going live, because it's the first time it's happening. It never has happened like this. Okay, coming to the question that I actually asked you about this picture,
Yeah.
wherein basically you were mentioning that. This was like a very transformer-like concept, but from a perspective of shooting a brand or shooting a product, so to bring out the character of the product, and I mean, how do you approach that? What do you do?
Well, it differs on brand to brand and what their strategy is. I think I have been a commercial photographer for such a long time. Uh, it is easier for me right now to judge and analyze when a brief comes to me. So you have to understand,
Right,
when it comes to commercial photography, you're marrying your art with obviously the creative idea that an agency is conceptualized for the brand in terms of the perception of what the brand needs to stand for.
right,
So it's pretty collaborative. So one has to understand that if it's not just about your photographic art and your capabilities and your skill set on how you're going to be able to create a picture, but it's about the entire idea and the entire communication as a process of what the client wants to say with the product and stuff like that.
Right.
So
Right.
there definitely is a strategy. If you're shooting for hair, then you got to know that the hair is the hero. It is not important about how your sets are looking or how your lighting is. I mean, your lighting can be excellent, but if it's not showing the hair in its full glory, then it doesn't work. In this case, the picture that we just saw was the bike. I mean, we added everything, but making sure that the bike looks great, right? I mean, if you
Right.
see, you would want to buy that bike irrespective, because we've shot it from an angle where all the features are glorified of the bike.
Right.
They were the first guys actually to come up with a headlight, and if you see the accessory that came along with, was absolutely what the other guys were not doing. So that was a
Right.
feature we wanted to enhance. I think it's pretty collaborative. I mean, if that doesn't happen, I don't think it really helps. You have to remember, you grow. When the brand grows, it's a parallel process.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Brands will invest into your ideation and your ideas only if you help the brand grow. If you can take a great picture, but if it is not enhancing what the product has to say, what the communication is, then I don't really think it works for the brand. And similarly, the brand is not going to invest into you or your ideas in the future. So it's pretty collaborative that way. And one has to also understand, it just doesn't end at being the brand and the photographer. I think there's an agency involved. There are a lot of ideas which are pre-discussed before you get at an execution stage.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So before I go on, actually, Jatin, if you can just adjust your camera a little bit, because I think you're not really very clearly visible. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's much better. So viewers, a lot of the viewers were actually saying that you are not visible. Okay. I think this is much better. I'm able to view you, but unfortunately, sometimes it takes a little bit of a different shape for a lot of the other viewers. Okay. The next one that before I take the next picture, actually, I want to do something a little bit more fun. So there's a new section that so I have got 3 more pictures which I definitely love to hear about, because they're very interesting concepts. But before I do that, you remember I was telling you that when you spoke about burst mode, guys, please keep your questions coming. I am going to get to those as well, and sorry for not being able to get to a lot of those because the conversation is just so interesting and it's just continuing. There's a new section called burst mode. Okay, that's basically our version of the rapid fire. Yeah, which is where I'll ask you about like 5 questions, and in those 5 questions, you get like a couple of seconds, and you have to the first thing that comes to your mind. You know how the drill goes, of course. Everybody knows how the drill goes. Are you ready?
Usually there is a hamper after this. Okay, so
there is a hamper. There is definitely going to be a hamper. I've actually told Karan to probably work on that and set that across. Okay, right. So the first question is your first shoot, and what was the year of it?
Professional or just otherwise?
Whichever you would like to pick.
Well, when I was 13, I was shooting butterflies.
Right. Okay, and professionally?
Professionally, in '96.
Okay, and what was the brand that you shot?
State Bank of India. That was the first big brand that I shot. Yeah.
I understand. Okay, your first ever camera.
My first ever camera was a Rolleiflex, the twin lens.
Right. Okay. Your best work so far, and yes, you cannot be diplomatic about this. You have to pick.
Hey, I'm not diplomatic. I have a very simple answer. I have a very simple answer. My best work is what I'm shooting tomorrow.
Okay. Wow. That's a good one. That's a good one. I must say.
It's a permanent answer. Yeah, it's yet to come.
Right. Right. What's the most memorable shoot that you've done so far? Your most memorable shoot?
It's biased, right? I mean, I think, imagine 20 years of shooting so much. I mean, I think, how can you come up with one? Yeah. And
there comes the diplomacy. There comes the
It's not just being fair to such great experiences. I mean, Bhavya, you should come to one of my next time, as soon as the lockdown gets over and I'm
Absolutely.
shooting, you should come to one of my shoots. You should see
Absolutely.
how we shoot. It's every shoot is memorable.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of wine flowing. There's great food on my sets. There's
Right.
every shoot is memorable. Yeah. So
Understand. Okay, we're gonna let that one go
no
since you've
diplomacy.
not picked an
No.
answer. Okay, okay. Your toughest shoot so far?
Toughest shoot so far. Mm, can't think of any tough shoots. Yeah. I mean, I'm usually a taskmaster when I'm actually shooting, so I get what I want.
Understand.
And
Understand.
don't rest till the time I get it. But the toughest shoot, I think, yeah, probably. I actually I do have one now. That going back memory lane, I was shooting a project for Great Eastern Shipping, where I was
Right.
actually asked to shoot a bulker. You know what a bulker is?
Okay.
It's
Yep.
a 45,000 ton crude oil carrier, and I was
Yep.
asked to shoot that, and I think that's one of my toughest shoots because we went through very turbulent waters around that time, and I drained myself out, yeah, and a near-death experience as well. So,
Oh, wow. We would love to hear about that. Okay, what exactly happened? What was the
well, it's been a lot of years, so I don't think I'll fall into trouble saying and sharing this because it was something where the docks had gone on a strike. I think the customs were not allowing people. The ship that was coming in was docked out in the high seas. We were supposed to go and shoot it. We were supposed to be lifted by a chopper, and there was an airlift planned. But because coast was on a strike, we couldn't. So we were smuggled into the high seas with a lifeboat. And it was just my crew, my team, the agency guys, somebody from the shipping company, and I think we sailed into one of those supply boats. Actually, it was not so illegal because we were in a supply boat which I was allowed to go in, and that
right?
supply boat. And suddenly we went halfway there, and I think the sea went absolutely rough. We've seen waves about 6 and 8 feet above our thing.
Wow.
We were about to capsize, and we didn't know which direction we were going in because the sea was extremely rough. I think it was probably one of those undercurrents that we lost communication both ways from shore as well as the captain of the ship, and somehow we managed. I don't know. Every single soul on that lifeboat or whatever the supply boat was puking and throwing up. We almost thought that the next moment is going to be the last moment, and yeah, it was one of those things.
Wow.
But we still made it.
Very interesting story. Super. Okay, coming to the burst mode again. What's in your bag in 2020? Apart from the camera and the lens, of course. I mean, I'm saying that from an accessory perspective, what's in your bag 2020?
Well, in terms of equipment, are you saying?
Equipment, right?
In terms of my equipment,
Yes,
is what you're
equipment.
asking?
Yes. Yes.
Actually, I've got a telescope for my son because these days we are stargazing every night. We
Right.
pulled it out after a long time, after 2-3 years. We're enjoying it. I think the way I'm seeing no end of coronavirus, I think I need a telescope to see when is the near distant future. So first 2020, I think what I need is a telescope in my bag more than a camera right now.
Right. Right. Right.
Because we just seems like we don't have a solution yet for what we are going through right now.
Okay. What's the one photographic accessory on your shoot that you can't do without?
A light meter?
Okay. Right.
A light meter. I can't do without a light meter for sure.
Understand. What's the best piece of advice that you've gotten from somebody on photography, and who was it?
I think I remember that very well. Was when I was an assistant with Mr. Atul Kasbekar. Actually, that was one of
Okay.
very very interesting advice, and he said it, which rhymed really well. He said, the steadiest hand is unsteadier than the most unsteadiest tripod.
Nice. That's a great one.
So I quote him on that. Actually, he used to say that quite often. I think it was quite interesting.
Okay. Okay. So
But I
mean,
I have a funnier one, which actually I've come
okay.
up with.
Okay.
It is nothing.
Please go for it.
It has nothing to do with photography, but I think it will
Okay.
lighten up the mood. Yeah.
Tell me.
So it says that, never criticize your wife's faults. There are these little imperfections which prevented her from getting a better husband.
That's, that's actually a good one. I'm sure a lot of people must have got it for sure. But for the ones who got it, I mean, I'm sure it is just absolutely amazing. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Coming back to, so that by the way ends a burst mode round,
Okay.
and the hamper, the moment the lockdown opens up, there is going to be a hamper which is definitely going to be sent to you. So please please watch out for that one for sure. Okay, coming to the image one as well. Again, there's another image
I
that
want,
I've
I
actually
want,
pulled out.
I want salon coupons.
Okay,
Everybody's dying because that's one thing that is going to be
absolutely,
like, very difficult, to find an appointment with your hairdresser. It's going to be damn tough now.
absolutely. Well, I've just managed to do something at home itself as well. So
And I'm too spoiled for it. I'm too spoiled for
I
it.
understand. Great. Okay. Coming to the image as well, one of the pictures that I've actually picked out is from the Marriott calendar as well. And
Oh, nice.
as you can see, this is the one that I've actually picked out. It's really interesting concept.
Oh, it's my
Uh,
favorite.
how
One of my favorite.
understand?
But
How did you shoot this? Okay.
you'll have to, yes, take it back a bit and take it higher, I think, for people to
Is
see.
this
Yeah,
is this
yeah,
okay,
come
guys? Can you
closer.
guys view
Yeah,
this?
yeah, yeah.
Perfect.
Better.
Okay.
Oh,
Cool.
this is one
So,
of my favorite images.
right. How did you shoot this? I mean,
So, whether you believe this or not, but this is shot one piece. There is absolutely no post
okay.
work in this,
Oh,
because there's no post work in this. This was basically paying a tribute to all the services in a five-star hotel. I mean, 12 to 13 to be
right.
precise. This one was for the provisions that you have on making your entire office in the business center. So we wanted to
Right.
communicate business centers in five-star hotels, through this picture. Now, what we did was obviously we got all the dancers because dance is a form of celebration, and we want to celebrate services. So we got this as a dancer who could dance, but she's sort of expressing herself with that dance form while working on the laptop that you can see. Now, if you see, there's a rod which is going behind the laptop into the wall that is there. There's a fax machine up there, which is also actually there's a rod which is holding that fax machine going through into the wall. And if you see, there's a fax roll which comes out of the fax machine. Now we took invisible thread and we just made a lot of these swings of invisible thread at multiple levels. Like we had about
Right.
14, 15 of those swings made, and we just rolled
Right.
the fax paper through those swings, rolling out, and at various stages kept sticking the fax roll. So,
Wow.
and eventually, when this whole set was ready, we just had to ask the girl and to come and pose with her leg up as if she's typing something.
Right.
So it took us a lot of time, but I think it was very rewarding when we saw this picture finally when we shot it. And imagine to get it one piece was even more interesting.
Yep, it's actually quite interesting because I'm sure that a lot of the viewers who are watching this as well would have thought that a lot of this work is actually being done by merging pictures or in a lot of post processing. But yes, to have been able to shoot this in one piece, it just makes it so much more rewarding and interesting altogether. I'm going to pick one more. Actually, I've got two more, but I'm going to just pick one more, which is also again from one of your conceptualized work, and it's actually quite interesting for me to view. So this is the one, if you
Oh
can
yeah!
see it.
Wow, yeah.
Uh,
I
so,
think
so can you just tell us a little bit about this picture and how did you shoot this?
so. This is also basically, if you see, we made the designer who was on this job. I mean, in fact, he's been the same designer for most of the Kereja Universal calendars that we did. His name's
Right,
Gavin Miguel, and he's an extremely talented designer. Literally can make outfits out of anything. From he can make it from iron rods, he can make it from
right,
balloons, he can make it from paint, anything. So this was basically, again, he had actually created this entire mirror reflective sort of and a wardrobe, which made it look like a dress, and it was done in parts. And so what he did was he rigged the entire outfit, and the girl had to just come, and the corset was done separately, which was also of
Right.
reflective surfaces. So it was made out of these really thin 1 mm acrylic mirrors. And what we did was, when the girl had to come and stand there right behind the structure that you see, which formed the gown, and
Right.
there were massive skyline and sky flexes that we had made. So basically, when you shoot this image, the reflection of those flexes could come on the mirrors that you can actually see there.
Right.
So because since they were reflective, what the girl is wearing is so reflective, whatever reflection you saw had to be something which is reflective of the skyline. So we made these massive, like some 15 by 15 feet flexes, three flexes. One was in the background, and two were alongside, which reflected the skyline.
Right. Okay. Okay. That's super interesting. I'm going to take one more. Once I figure out, okay, which way the phone's going. Yeah, there you go. So this is something which is very simple, very plain Jane. It's actually something which is a pure out and out sort of a commercial sort of a shoot. And what I wanted actually, once you see this, is if you can just give our viewers and a lot of the budding photographers an idea of how simple is it really simple to do, and what is the sort of manner in which you can actually do this. So this is basically for ID eyewear, and
Yeah.
from the face of it, of course, it looks extremely simple, just like a portrait which you've shot for a product. But can you just take us through that?
Yeah, so this was in fact, sorry, I think I may have lost you before because my earplugs went off, unless there was a relevant question
Okay,
along with it. But I think if
okay.
you're asking how was this shot, is that what you're,
Yep, yep. It
was it?
from the face of it looks like super very simple, but is there something much more behind the scenes than just?
So we shot this in New York. At
Mhm.
we had access to a very interesting restaurant, which overlooked Times Square, and we shot quite a few. In fact, there's an entire series of this idea where we shot in at the Times Square. And
Right.
now the thing is that they had a show in the evening, so we had limited. I think your
Oops.
screen's gone off. So we had limited
Yes.
time
I'll
to
just
shoot
bring it
this. We
on.
we had I think about 5 hours to shoot the entire campaign, which was about 7, 8 images.
Right.
So we couldn't actually stick to a particular time slot of shooting these images. So uh, we had to fill flash this a lot,
Right.
because the sun, if you can see here, this is like 11 o'clock in the afternoon, not really the best time to shoot eyewear, so to say. But we compensated, the key light with a massive flashlight on their faces so that it captures
Right.
depth as well as the eyewear. And obviously you're shooting celebrities, so they needed to be in absolute prime glam focus, along
Right.
with the New York Times Square, New York, the skyline in the background. So yeah, there was in terms of work and conceptualizing, I think we had done a recce of a day before to identify the spots, because unlike India, New York, if you're shooting in New York, they need to be, and especially on the streets and stuff, you need to be very careful and identify the places and get permissions and stuff like that. Uh,
Mhm.
so we had identified the spot. This was a restaurant, obviously, where we were shooting in. So we had a time slot between, I think 10:30 and 11:30, where we were
Right.
supposed to shoot on this restaurant. And we obviously, because the recce was done a day before, we exactly knew what the light was, how much had to be filled in, and yeah, that's pretty much. It's just a lot of homework, I guess. Yeah, that's all.
Right. Understand. Okay, great. So guys, I'm going to take about like 2 or 3 more questions. So in case if you have any more questions, then please just send them across. One of the questions that I wanted to also ask was, and also some a viewer is also asking the same, is that do you edit a lot of your pictures, whether it's done internally? If not, if it's outsourced, then do you give a lot more freedom to the people who are actually doing the editing work?
No, there's no freedom to the editing team at all. I think
Okay.
that's also because I edit my own pictures first. I
Right.
whether if it's a tone that I need to add, if it's tonality and texture that I have to work with, it's the quality of the residual image that I'm looking at, the cast, the colors, the tonalities, and everything. It's something that I work on it first. And
Right.
I prepare the image on a low res. Actually, the image is absolutely ready in low res because it's much easier and faster to work on a low resolution file. And once I've worked on it, then it's just about the post production team just takes it forward by making sure that they fine tune it really well. And but I don't think they have the leeway to sort of alter the image at all. I mean, then
Understand.
it ceases to become my image.
Understand. Okay. So one of our viewers is actually very persistent, and he's been asking this question 3, 4 times. He's asking, how is it that you can actually assist? How can they assist you?
How can they assist me?
Right.
Well, I mean, I think you just have to write, and if there's a vacancy, and if I see that you're very serious about working and being a photographer, you'll probably get a chance. As easy as that.
Understand. Understand. Okay. We spoke a little bit earlier about this one aspect wherein, the art and how artists understand and do things. So, in fact, that's one of the things that I know that we've spoken a lot about over the years. And considering that you were actually internationally very well exposed, you've exhibited at a lot of places as well. Do you think that photography as an art form is still not considered, I mean, it's still not taken its true shape in India even today?
So basically, for so many years, I used to be somebody who kept complaining about it, Bhavya. And I think we've had this discussion before. I think probably now it's open to the audience. Is that
Right,
I always used to keep telling you that, I think this is probably one of the few countries where, it's difficult to survive being a photographer
right,
who just shoots uh, artistic images for himself. I mean, or surviving without doing commercial work for that matter.
right,
I think it's probably one of the only cases. And point in case, we've tried. I mean, I think through your artistic platform also, we've tried so many times, and I've
right,
always been forthcoming when it came to those wherever I could help, wherever I could come forth. And it's not just about what you've tried to do, but it's also been about what anybody's tried to do. I've been very forthcoming in helping, so to say,
right,
to make sure that they may be a possibility where people can just shoot for themselves and still manage to survive like all the other artists do, and where people can buy photographic prints for their wall, consider it art, and one doesn't have to shoot commercially. So I was always complaining about it, but now actually when I look back, I feel that I don't think there's anybody else who can bring in that change. I think as a photographer, I think we have to try harder, to try and bring that change in. I mean, I think now I've stopped complaining. It's been a few years that I've stopped complaining about that because
right,
I think that we are not doing enough. Maybe somewhere along the line, I think we'll have to push it a little further. We'll have to push harder. We'll have to work harder towards, or maybe come up with content like that. Maybe come up with. Uh, I mean, if you see today, the film industry's flourished, the designers have flourished. That's because, they've probably put in extremely hard work in making the industry reach where it is reached. So any industry for that matter, for it to reach somewhere, I think the people have to work harder. So I feel even when it comes to fine art photography being accepted as an art form here, where people start collecting fine art photography, I think we'll have to work harder.
right. How is it different as compared to what you see abroad? In that comparison, how is it different?
Well, because I mean, I've traveled and extensively seen galleries abroad where I can see people walk in and buy $1,000, €1,000 prints and €5,000 prints, and they're doing up their houses and they buy photographic art. And I think if that is possible, and I've seen people buying such amazing genres of work. I mean, I see wildlife. I mean, people buying such beautiful wildlife prints, because they love to see that image on their walls. So that's how it is different, I feel. I've seen it with my own eyes. It's not something that I've read somewhere. I've spent time in galleries where, I've pretended to be nobody, where people have just walked in and bought fine art prints, so.
Right. Right. Is it because the audience over there is just generally a lot more acceptable and a lot more open to what really art is? Because considering, if you see, like I know that with artistic as well, we've had these round of conversations wherein if you take a sculptor, if you take a painter, if you take all of these other arts, and they are still considered to be an artist, but when it comes to photographers, unfortunately, that word never comes in. It's never an artist. Unfortunately, it's always the first word that always comes to mind is more of a photographer. Do you think it's probably because of the level of exposure that we don't have here yet?
No, it's also a new form of art. No, it's only probably a century old, Bhavya. I mean, I think
Right.
maybe a century and a half. I think you can trace down history of art in terms of paintings and sculptures for 4,000 years, but photography is absolutely new form of art. You can only trace it down to maybe 150 years. So it is
Right.
obviously a much newer form of art, and before it could establish itself to its best possible fashion, I mean, I think the digital world took over. The thing is that, when it comes to a painting, when you buy a painting, it's going to be one of its kind. Even if the artist decides to do the same painting, he can't do the same thing again. And now with
True.
technology, I mean, I think with technology, there can be so many multiples. Like you can make one artwork and probably do 1,000 prints of the same. So,
Right.
and when it comes to art, I think it's a very personal thing, right? I mean, you'd want to. It's not like a Louis Vuitton bag where it's going to be okay if 1,000 people are going to walk with it. When you come to
Right.
your house, it's a reflection of your personality. When you go to somebody's house and you see a certain artwork, there's a story behind it, why the person has bought it, why it's so personal to that person, and stuff like that. So before photography could come to age, I mean, I think, or get that due, I mean, I think that digital, to a certain extent, the whole taking pictures on a digital platform and the whole concept of save as, sort of ruined it for photographers, is what I would say. But nevertheless,
Understand.
I think in time to come, probably it's going to change. The mindset's going to change where people will
How
probably
how
see it.
Which is what I know that you mentioned that as a photographer, of course, and of course, like as being leading media industry people, we really have to try harder. But how do you propose, even for a photographer per se, they have to kind of get the communication out there? Is that what you're proposing?
I mean, basically, cultivate the idea in people that it is okay to, hang a photographic print. I mean, or in a lot of cases, even go to the extent of making sure that, you see a photograph being hanging on the wall. I mean, to that extent, I feel that
I
you'll have to
understand.
push it. You'll have to push it. You'll have to convince them, or even to a huge extent, create content where, it enables people to put that content on the wall. I mean, at the end of the day, there's so much of space that you're dealing with, where people are only going to put that great piece of work. So to be able to create that piece of work, which can be on the walls. So
Great.
it's not just about your work in galleries. I think it's about your work at homes, at office spaces. I mean, your work needs to inspire people. I mean, that's what a painting does. That's what a sculpture does. Any piece of art does that. It inspires you. So, I mean, I think we'll have to keep doing a lot of inspiring work for people to buy it and put it up there, and then motivate them, inspire them, things like that, and I think we'll be there.
Understand. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Jatin, for doing this. It's always, as usual, wonderful speaking to you. And of course, knowing you since so many years, I know that we've always had so many fun conversations and so many serious ones, which are revolving around the industry. So thanks so much. I hope that you enjoyed it as well. And sorry guys if I was not able to take in a lot of your questions as well, but we were kind of running out of time a little bit, so so that's why. But yeah, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Jatin.
Thank you, Bhavesh. It
Thanks
was
a
nice
lot.
talking to you.
Okay,
Always.
yes.
Bye. Bye.
Okay, see you guys soon. We'll see you next week once again. Okay, bye bye. See you guys. Okay, thank you so much, guys, for being around and joining in another episode of Expert Talk with me, Bhavya Desai. Thank you to Team AP as well, and of course, Jatin, as usual, always for doing this. We will be posting the conversation for anybody who's actually joined in now and who's probably missed this. We will be posting the whole conversation on our YouTube channel in a few days. And also, apart from that, we'll also be uploading it on our podcast. So if you've missed this, then you can always go over there and you can see this. And we will see you next week. Until next time, happy viewing.